Welcome to this week's episode of Unsettle Yourself. This week we're talking about your value within relationships. This is something I've been talking to people about for the last few weeks, especially as things sort of unravel, as our roles are less defined, whether that's in our career, within our relationships, within our friendships, just in general. Things are less defined now that things are a little bit more fluctuate. So what I've noticed is that people are really uncertain or starting to see how others have valued them within the relationship. So whether that's within a family situation, within a friendship, or within an intimate partnership. And the first question that I definitely want to ask is, do you feel valued in these relationships? So do you feel valued with your friendships and with your partnerships, or even in a co-working and employment opportunity? Do you feel valued? So there are different ways to understand this, and usually it has to do with whether or not somebody is recognizing you for your gifts and whether they're seeing you, or if they're not. And usually when they're not, we don't feel valued. So the first thing that I want to talk about is doing that for yourself and understanding your own inherent value first. And part of the way to do that is to recognize the value in others. Because when you're able to see other people's value, you start to see yourself and your own value a lot more. So you can do it one of two ways. It really depends on what works best for you. So you can start to look at other people and start to name their value within your own life. So usually I would say to do that with people that you know versus people you don't know, just because usually they have a lot more value in your life if you've decided to keep them around. So starting with recognizing their value and then looking at yourself and understanding, what value do I bring to my relationships? And naming that and deciding that for yourself is really important, because they won't ever see that within you if you don't already see that within yourself. They might, but you might not also believe it if they're stating that they see value where you do not. So understanding your own value first is extremely important, because that does allow others to see how A, you value yourself, and then B, how they should probably value you as well, because you already recognize that and see that for yourself. Um, the other question I have is, do you wait for others to express the value that they see in you in order to feel that first? So if you're waiting around for somebody else to express what they see as your value, you might be waiting around for a really long time. And this is why it's important to not really rely on somebody else to tell you what they value in you, and why it's important for you to start with what you value in yourself. That is the most important thing, because again, that might not ever come, and then you might ask for it and they still might not be able to recognize that or see that for you and within yourself. Now, the next question I have is, can you see that those who don't see your value don't actually see their own value? So this is something that I've been practicing and working on with a few different people, friends and clients alike, about recognizing that when somebody else doesn't see your own value, it's actually really easy to see how they don't see their own value. They're not able to distinguish and accept what their own gifts are, so they can't turn that back around and recognize that within you. So again, it all starts with yourself. That's why it's important for you to recognize your own value so that you can also recognize somebody else's. It's really important, because if you're not able to do that for yourself, then you also aren't able to express that to somebody else. So you might even see it, but might not be able to express it because you've never actually expressed that to yourself. I want to use an example of hiring a coach. So if you don't understand what you bring to the table first, then hiring a coach might not be valuable to you, because you don't understand how they might be able to help guide or assist you, not create you and not tell you what to do, because there is a big difference. But there might be an issue with you not understanding their gifts and their strengths, that you don't feel like they can bring anything to you because you have everything and have all of the answers, which, by the way, you do. It's just sometimes you're not able to see them, which is what a coach usually does. So, understanding that value in someone else and saying they might have a different perspective, they've lived life differently than I have, so they might bring value in that way versus somebody who's done exactly what you've done, and that might be valuable also. But you need to see that and recognize that within somebody to also then say, I'm going to pay for this thing. So that's another way to question what it is that you decide you're going to pay for as well. You see value in a gym membership, for instance, if you go. I don't see value in it if I know that I'm not going to go there. So there's a big difference between knowing that there is value there versus knowing that there's value for you. And you need to understand those and what works for you also. So start with the value that's inside of you first. And can you truly use yourself as that example to see the value in others first? So recognize that if you were in that situation, what would you want people to see as your value? And what are your strengths and what can you bring to the table first? Can you understand and know those things and stand in that power so that when somebody else doesn't recognize that, you can truly move on and truly move into relationships with people who do see that value and who do recognize it, so that you're not living in a place where you're surrounded by people who just don't understand, who just don't see you, because you're going to then suffer so much longer for all of the things that you know are truly gifts for yourself. So, recognizing your own value within relationships, so that includes, like I said, employers and coworkers, your intimate relationships, your friendships, and your family. It's really important to take stock of all of those, not just one or the other. Because when you show up and you say that this is the value that I have to offer, and somebody doesn't recognize it, you have that choice to move on from it versus staying there and trying to teach them or trying to convince them of your value, because you're not here to convince anybody. If they do not see it, then that's something that they need to work on for themselves. But you do not have the you have the choice to move on from that. You don't have to stay in that space, in that energy with that other person. So take all of that into consideration as you think about your value within relationships and the value that others bring to your relationships as well. And of course, if you need assistance with any of this, I do offer free calls, free 30-minute coaching calls. That link is available in the profile or in the caption below, and I hope to hear from you soon.